Hello, everyone. I'm your host for today's Swine podcast. I'm Laura Greiner, and with me today I have Dr. Roger Campbell. How are you today, Roger?
I'm very good, thanks, Laura, and good to talk to you.
Yeah, glad to have you on today. Roger, for our audience who may not be familiar with you, would you mind sharing just a little bit about yourself?
Well, I currently run my own business. It's a consulting business, and it's mainly on developing technologies, product development, and R&D design, and with some of the bigger companies in Australia and some in Canada. But I've got a long history in the pork industry, over 40 years, half in research as a scientist and half in managing science and companies. So that's pretty much my career in a nutshell. And I'm driven totally by discovery. So even when I was running companies, I was still looking for what the heck were we trying to find and were we making progress? So that still drives me. Yeah. So I don't care who makes the progress, as long as I see it. That's right. And that's what I do for a lot of my clients, interpret research outcomes and how it might affect them. Maybe they should look at it, or a lot of them probably not. Yeah. So that's what I do, Laura, now. Yeah.
Yeah, you and I have had a lot of wonderful conversations over the years, and right, we talk about some of the research that you've done in Australia and how it applies in the US and vice versa. And one of the things I wanted to touch on today, at least, or to start our conversation, is rather than go backwards, maybe go forwards. Where do you see our biggest issues in the next 5 to 10 years in the swine industry?
Well, I see, they vary globally, but I do follow, what happens annually across the world in, where the costs are and where the technical, opportunities are. And I think the biggest opportunity, and it's based on the fact that, productivity is a big driver of profit. And I think one of the biggest opportunities is the livability of piglets, from birth to weaning, and even the livability of grower finisher pigs. Because if you look at global competitiveness and global situations, the US probably has the highest wean to finish mortality, lack of livability, and everyone has pretty much higher pre-weaning mortality because we've seen a big increase in litter size over the last 10 years. And that's brought with it other challenges, which I'm not sure we're making that much progress with, Laura. So they're two big opportunities, and they're global. They're global. It's animal health, animal livability. I think the other one, and applies to the US, is if you look at your herd feed efficiency, total feed used by the total carcass produced or live weight, it's one of the highest in the world. It's 18% higher than, say, the Netherlands. So that's got to be an opportunity, even though your feed costs are lower and you still have the lowest cost of production in the world. It's an opportunity because if you could bring up from about 4.1, which it is now, to 3.6, about $18 a pig. So it's worth having a look at. So and the others are issues that are likely to come up. You need to keep an eye on. Europe, I think, is what's next in the welfare arena. What's next in the carbon footprint arena. And the one that worries me, and I'm not sure where it's going, but I start seeing more people doing something about it, is how's climate change going to affect the global pork industry. I see Midwest this year, there's a session on it. The last 𝗪𝗔 meetings in November last year was a session on it. So people are obviously aware of it, but the last thing you want to do is get too far behind that curve. So I see there the issues. Livability is an issue across the world, and I think, just how much feed and how much feed wastage, feed wastage utilisation is still occurring, and that particularly applies to gestating sows. The utilisation of nitrogen is about 29%, and the phosphorus 16% in gestation. So we've got to be able to do something about that. Yes.
Yeah. So I think those are good points, and livability is one, whether we're talking sows or wean to finish. We've talked about this for years, and
Yeah, you're
right.
right.
And as you mentioned, our numbers are continually going up. We're producing more pigs. Livability numbers are going down. Mortality numbers are going up. Anything that you see on the horizon to help offset those issues? Any technology or anything we should be thinking about?
I think one of the genetic companies has been selling the advantage of genomics, and we no doubt believe you've seen the graphs of litter size plus birth weight going up at the same time. Well, that hasn't hit commercial production yet. So, but it does take quite a while for genetic gains from these top nucleus herds to come into commercial production. But based on what we're hearing, that should have a fairly big impact, fairly big impact. The other things that there are little things you can do to increase, survival of pigs after they're weaned. What is it? 𝘰𝗶𝗹𝗵𝗺's work on not once a day feeding when they come into the farrowing house, but twice or three times has an effect. Simple things like increasing the interest of pigs in by what kind of creep feed they have, like large pallets, playful creep feeders. Believe it or not, you think, well, what's that going to do? When you follow them through, you actually get greater livability of those piglets. So it's things that, we're keeping throwing stuff in the diet when they're weaned, but the things before they're weaned can have an effect. And another one I heard you mention in a recent podcast was, I think there's potential to improve the health of piglets through the sows diet as well. There's enough papers published on that to say you can do it, and it's well worth looking at, I think, And of course, for grower finishers, the biggest technology we've seen in 10 years has been gene editing, but whether it's ever accepted by the community and the regulators, no idea. But certainly this is a space to watch, So there's plenty out there, and some just take a bit of time to come through. Others have reported big effects and then no one else has carried through.
I think sometimes we struggle with the balance between what research supports and either what we have for labor availability on the farm or, the ability to implement that technology. And you and I were talking about this before we started too. We were talking a little bit about Prop 12 and research that you've all done in Australia and how that might apply here. So I'm going to kind of jump over to that for a minute, and we'll come back to the feed efficiency piece that you brought up earlier. But we were talking about the idea that, if we can mix sows successfully after 5 days and have great conception rates. And so maybe allude a little bit more or expand a little bit more on the information that you have, because as you were telling me, you're quite successful with that in Australia, and here in the United States, obviously we're very nervous about doing that.
Yeah, so when I was with the pork CRC, we had a whole, 6 years of research on, I think it was called high integrity Australian pork. And the first part was reducing the confinement of sows. And if you look at a reproductive cycle, 80% of it, the sows locked in gestation. So that's where you concentrate first if you want to reduce their confinement. What we found was that you can make group housing of sows work for the sow and for the producer if there's a couple of major things you have to do. One is how you manage space, especially at mixing. So more space at mixing, probably only 4 or 5 days. After that, if you want, if you're allowed, you can reduce the space, without any problem. But the biggest effect we noticed was how the sow's performance and welfare measured by cortisol behaviour damage changed over time was the experience of the sow with the group housing system, and the carers. So first research done at 𝘪𝘳𝗿, big research facilities like you have in the US now. It was a disaster mixing sows in summer. Yeah, fertility collapsed, everything collapsed. And it wasn't much fun in the other seasons either. When we did the research at the same facility, 14 months later, same genetics, given the amount of space we knew, or we did a space experiment, there were no problems whatsoever with welfare or reproduction, even in summer. Yeah, and I think it was due mainly to those sows having experienced that system. Yeah, and the ones that didn't behave were probably no longer there, right? Yeah. So Australia was a revolution or a transformation. So majority of sows are grouped at weaning in Australia, all 5 days after weaning, and that's dictated by the retailers. Yeah, yeah. There's no legislation, but if you want to sell your pigs, that's how you do it. And yeah, it's a bit like what you're going through now. When it first started, never heard producers so upset, so uptight. You know, that this is going to be a disaster, and it was for 12 months, right? Not because the sows were fighting it, it's because they were tucked away in sheds while they revamped their whole, no one took care of the sows. Yeah, so reproduction did go down for 12 months. Yeah. But now it just works like a charm. Yeah, doesn't matter if you wean them at group weaning, but yeah, you're allowed 1 day, I think, in confinement. So Australia's been able to achieve about an 80% reduction in confinement of sows. It's a big deal, yeah.
Yeah, and as we were talking, your mortality is actually very good too, right?
Yes, our mortality since this all started in 2011, finished about 2016. So our mortality has gone down continually over that time. It's only like 6.1% now, very low. Those systems can work, and it's a bit like we were talking about before we come on, Laura, that there's already information out there that people obviously didn't use, because I don't think you'd be facing a Prop 10 if you had. That's it, a Prop 12, yeah. Because you could have argued that, well, you don't actually need 2.4 square metres or 24 square feet, but you might for the first 4 days they're mixed, right? But you don't actually after that, yeah. The sow's welfare is not affected if you look at sow damage, cortisol, and reproduction is not affected. So it can be done, but it's scary, and I'm surprised that America's still scared about it. That's right, because no one over here is. Yeah, been done. I judge how things are going in the US mainly from the Midwest meetings. So I go every year, and you see what are the trends, what are the concerns, in the papers and that. And it was a whole 3 years it was on sow welfare. That was it, and I'm surprised, that you're still where you are, because I think we've definitely moved way on, even beyond what they're doing in most of Europe, without any problems, yeah.
Yeah, and I think some of that, as we talked about with a couple other podcasts recently, is some of the labor challenges. And so Australia, I'm sure, is not immune to this either today, is some of the challenges of labor.
It's a real challenge, yeah.
Right. So how are you all handling labor on farms today?
Well, they've used, in the past, they've been using Filipinos, But the COVID's put an end to people coming into Australia. Yeah, I think it's opening up again now. So people, I think what they're doing, I'm on a couple of boards of big producers. What they're doing and what they have to do is take much better care of their staff. Yeah, they all think they do. There's so many job opportunities opening up for people now. As the COVID thing ends. Yeah, there's not much more you can do than give your staff all the support they need, and maybe even if it's needed, higher salaries. You got to keep them. You have good staff, and a lot of them are leaving to drive trucks and that, because you get big salaries to drive trucks these days. No truck drivers. Yeah, everyone's facing a labour problem. Yeah. And if you think about it, though, how COVID's changed work practices, I think we need to put our thinking caps on just how, to reduce labour, what can we do within the pig industry, to make those changes? Sometimes it's forced on you, and I think we're getting to the point where it's getting forced on us. So,
yeah, it's very good. So I'm going to flip back now to feed efficiency. You had mentioned that the U.S. still has some opportunities from a feed efficiency standpoint. So what do you think we're missing?
Well, what I did, I got into a rabbit hole actually, looking at why is the US different, so much less efficient than the Netherlands, right? Now, the Netherlands have very high input costs, so they don't have a low cost production, but they have great productivity. And I think they're running a herd feed conversion ratio of it's under 3.5, which is amazing, really. They're going to 98 kilogram carcass. And what they do have is low wean to finish mortality, 4.5. Australia has about 4.5 as well, but we don't have birds, we don't have feed, we don't have the flu. But then I actually contacted a Dutch colleague, and you know what they're doing over there, of course, is they're not castrating all the male pigs. About 60% are left in calf, So that'll make a difference. Yeah, that'll make a difference. Their energy levels are probably they're not any higher than the USA. So there has been interesting research lately showing, believe it or not, right? Showing things like gender, like females have a higher digestibility of protein, dry matter, and energy than males, and higher feed intakes reduces digestibility of nutrients. So, that's well worth looking at. It's only 3 or 4%, but it's 4% on DE is half a megajoule,
Right,
so,
right.
Big effect, Higher mortality contribute to poorer feed efficiency, growth finisher, so But it's a big difference, 18% if you think about it, isn't it?
I agree. I think it's, again, when we talk about low-hanging fruit or opportunities, when you say 18%, that is a big number, and it should be an opportunity.
So, and your productivity is getting near the Dutch productivity. I think they're 30 pigs per sow year, but they're selling 28.8 because they've got good livability. So that makes a difference as well. So, but again, I think your nutritionists just need to think of it. Maybe at the moment, there's the emphasis has been on growth rate, because that's the greatest value is getting big pigs out, and when you've got cheap feed. But it's all I'm saying, there's a tremendous inefficiency there, and in pregnant sows as well, of just nutrient use. Hey,
you had mentioned that the gestating sow, you believe there's opportunity to improve feed efficiency. And so I'm just kind of trying to think through that. Where do you think that biggest loss is? Is it just around weaning and that period, or do you think there's other parts of gestation where we have opportunity that we're missing?
I think it's right through gestation.
Okay.
And the reason is, Laura, that their dam requirements are so low for most of gestation. They're so low, and the sow is so good at only taking up what she wants. Apart from energy, she always take up energy. But she doesn't even digest calcium and phosphorus for a period of gestation. She doesn't need it. She's an amazing animal. But there's a recent paper, and they looked at precision feeding. So here you change the amino acid level. You might have seen it every day, versus flat feeding. And they were pretty low crude protein diets, but nitrogen efficiency or utilization was highest at 29% over gestation. Phosphorus utilization was 13 to 16%, very good parity. That's it. We're a long way from what we need to be there. It's not affecting productivity of the sow.
But it is our efficiency. So I
Oh,
think that's interesting, right? Because again, we talk many times about cost justification. And so
yeah.
have you put economics behind those numbers? I know.
I think the paper might have, but I haven't. Yeah, no.
Okay.
So, I haven't. But I was just shocked, unless they got their tables wrong, by how much was lost. Yeah. Yeah. And what we don't know, this is my belief, you're a better sow nutritionist than I've ever been. What we really don't know is what's happening in very late gestation. The sow's taking care of that litter herself as best she can, despite what we throw at her, or our beliefs. But I think there's a lot of room there to assist her with, I'm talking nutrient intakes or strategies in late gestation that will flow through to piglet survival as well, Yeah. We just don't understand how nutrient supply changes there, or how she changes what she wants. Yeah.
Right.
It's still big opportunities there.
Yeah, she's so willing to give up so much of her own body.
Oh, she will.
So that's where the complication comes from a nutrition study standpoint, right? Is every time we try to manipulate the diet, she'll compensate. And
yeah, she's already, that's right. Yeah. So you could run, I think in that, there's a recent paper out on a new vitamin D analog. They looked at reducing calcium phosphorus 25%, but the sows, this was day, I think, 105, 90 to 105, 25% reduction in calcium and phosphorus had no effect at all on phosphorus or calcium retention, because she didn't need it. That's, or her digestibility on that diet was higher. Just amazing what they can do. But when you put this other material in, it's a technology to keep an eye on. We can talk about later, but I think it's 1-alpha-hydroxy𝗪𝗪. Just amazing effects on calcium and phosphorus digestibility. Amazing. And on energy digestibility. Yeah. What I learned more from it was just what we don't know about these sows.
Yeah. They're amazing.
They don't need anything early. That's right.
Yeah.
But they will always use energy. To put a bit of extra energy, they'll use that, mainly for their own growth, though, isn't it? So, a lot of potential there, Laura, still, late station,
Yeah. Another thing you had actually talked about in a paper that you had sent me was inulin and calcium nitrate in late gestation. Colostrum
immunoglobulin levels was butyric acid at about 1 kilogram a ton. Yeah, I don't think it changed. I'm not sure about the amount of colostrum, but it had just a 3-fold increase in all of the immunoglobulin.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was late gestation as well. So the money that's best spent is better understanding the sow in late gestation. I'm not talking day 90 or last third. I'm talking probably last 10, 15. Yeah. We don't understand it properly, I don't think. Yeah.
No, I think for years we've talked about, do we treat her like a dairy cow? Do we treat her differently? And right, so we understand that transition phase, if you want to call it a transition phase for a sow, is critical. We know that's where mortality is the highest. We know that's right. That's where the biggest opportunities lie. But you're right. We don't quite comprehend enough about what's really happening metabolically to really hit that home run that we're all looking for, I think.
We're all looking for what is the secret.
Yes.
What is the secret?
Yeah.
But there's probably something there, there's certainly going to be constraints, or otherwise she'd be doing it herself. And it seems to me that the Danish sows and the US sows, both, great litter sows, but they're totally different sows. Yeah. Because, the Danes have been going on about the amount of energy before she gives birth affects stillbirth rates and duration of parturition. Well, the American work just can't repeat that, you know. You think, but it has effects, but it's not on duration of parturition, which is a lot less than it is for the Danish sows anyway. Yeah. I don't think we want to go to the Danish model. Unless you're a Dane. Have the right genetics. There's research showing that if you look at the genetic correlations between litter traits and progeny traits, there's not too many, but the one that is that's positive related is birth weight. And we already know this, but it's shown a genetic link as well. Birth weight and survival and performance of the piglets, including digestion. Yeah. So, and what it predicts is that going forward, you probably go for the smaller litter, but still wean the same amount or maybe more. You know. So, and the progeny do better. So we all do that. I think we inherently know that, but it took a geneticist to put that paper out. So, yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, things are going to change. Yeah.
One of the things, I'm going to switch gears on you just a little bit. One of the things that we're currently seeing in the U.S. is an increase in E. coli issues in the nursery. So many discussions have come back around from people about creep feeding or the approach of introducing feed before we wean pigs, right? Thinking that if we can get some transition over to solid food before we wean, we might reduce that E. coli attachment and potential propagation. What do you see in terms of technologies in that creep area? Because typically in the United States, we're not, as you know, heavily creep feeding before weaning.
No. Yeah. And I say, if you talked to me 5-6 years ago, I wouldn't even consider creep feeding. Pain in the ass, you know, to be honest with you. You have to go do it. But now there's too much evidence that creep feeding, and it probably doesn't matter what's the nutrient level of the creep, but what attracts the piglet to the creep, you know. So there's a good paper out on just modifying a creep feeder by putting some feathers and stuff like that. Attracts the piglets. And then when they wean them, and they measured mortality as well. Those that were on what they call the playful feed, it was no different. The other one just modified a bit. Ate significantly more in the first 1 or 3 days, which is a crucial period when they don't. And then mortality was down. Large pellets, you know, large creep pellets, work done in Australia and more, I think even at KSU. Okay, they're attracted to a large pellet, you know, it's a 12 millimeter or something like that. Yeah, it's like a rock to them almost, yeah, but they roll on it, whatever. But it again increased intake after weaning, just on normal pellets, not taking the large pellet across. And again, in the 𝘠𝘱𝘱𝘰𝘳 studies, there was less, health was better and survival was better. So this has got nothing to do with what they were given once they weaned. The biggest effect I've seen on intake in any paper I've read is flavouring the water. Yeah. Have you read that? It was a commercial product. It increased dry feed intake and growth rate in the first week after weaning by 80%. There's something in it. Now, it may not be that easy to implement, but if it solved the problem, you probably would, right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that was flavouring the water at the sow level, well, at the piglet level on the sow farm.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And then flavouring the water first week after weaning. Yeah.
Well, perfect. So, Roger, as we wrap up our time today, are there any key points that you'd like our audience to think about as they head out the door and go back out to their pigs?
Well, I think, the things that I keep seeing is that even though there's a lot of concern and we think, oh, we need to improve this, what there is out there is often information already available on that, and it's just being overlooked because you're worrying about something else, you know, so that in many cases, I think we have technologies out there that can solve a lot of our problems, and we're just not fully aware of them. Yeah, so that's what I do, is look for those and let my clients know it's either on the horizon or you probably should give this a go right now. You know, that's it. So keep that in mind, and keep asking if you're a producer or you're working on it. Ask your nutritionist, your veterinarian, what is happening out there give me something exciting. Tell me something good. Yeah, that's right. So put the pressure on those people. Yeah, because they're the ones who should know it, you know, yeah. And the other thing is, stay optimistic, because if you look what, you know, the last 10 years, we've had so many challenges with disease, with human disease and that, but all industry, particularly US industry, has come through it. It's really responded so well. They're very innovative, and stay optimistic, because this too will pass, you know. Yeah. And the main message for everyone is, things are going well. This is it. You should always ask yourself the question, what can go wrong? Yeah, what can go wrong? And what are we actually doing about it? Yeah, have we got something in place? You know, yeah, it makes you think a bit harder. It's a simple question, man. Yeah, it's a hard question to answer. It's an easy question to ask.
Yeah, but I think it's so important, because we tend to be reactive as people.
Yeah, we're generally reactive. That's right. And I think, again, on the welfare thing, try and get ahead of the curve in areas that you might think are coming up, and invest in research there, and really just look at what's happening in Europe, because that's where most of it starts. Yeah, but don't forget it. Yeah, because it's a bit like Prop 12, comes back and bites you. Yeah.
Well, perfect. Thank you for those key points. As you know, the last few questions that we like to ask our guest speakers, it's really just common questions we ask everybody. The first question I'd like to ask is, do you have a favorite swine resource book that you'd recommend to the audience?
Yeah, same one as everyone else, and it's nutrient requirements as well. Right? It's the only book I use on swine, to be honest with you, but I use it every day, sometimes twice a day. You know, so just checking up on what people are doing, why you're adding that, and then I look and I say, oh, you're meeting requirements. So it's just tremendous. Yeah.
How about something that's not related to pigs? Is there anything you'd recommend to the audience?
There's two books I'd recommend. They're pretty old now, but they're both about science and discovery and human interaction. One is the double helix, the discovery of DNA, structure of DNA, Watson and Crick. And the other one is Brighter Than 1,000 Suns, which is about the development of the atomic bomb at Alamos. Yeah, just a lot of just see how personal scientists got involved, and how jealous they got of each other when these discoveries were being made. Yeah, they're great reading. Yeah. And the other one I like was when I first went to America. I read it. I was going over to Beltsville in Washington, D.C., and I read the book 𝘱𝗵𝗃 by James Mitchell, I think. Yeah, 𝘱𝗵𝗃, just a great story of the history of the Chesapeake Bay area. Yeah.
Very good. The last question, Roger, that we like to ask really evolves around, if you can think of somebody that you define as successful within our industry, what's a key characteristic or trait that you think they have that's helped them become successful?
Yeah. Well, I can think of a lot of successful people in our industry. That's right. Yeah. And I think some of the traits. One is that they're generally compassionate people, compassionate to other people as well. Yeah. So they may be a production manager, usually tough as nails. Right? The ones that I've found had the greatest respect were tough as nails, but they were understanding of other people's needs, understanding other people's needs. So, and the understanding that everyone wants to belong, you know. So if someone who does that in whatever level they're at will usually be successful. Now the other one is those who keep challenging the status quo in the nicest way. Well, why are we doing it? And why are we still doing it like this, you know? And it may be nothing to change, but it makes people think then, yeah. So yeah, they're two of the traits. The other is just general. Most of the people I know, it's just integrity, you know. Gotta have that. You know? Yeah. Then you don't give them respect, you earn respect that way, yeah, and you make a difference. There's plenty of them out there. Marcio asked me who's the top 3 swine people. There's a lot more than 3 out there, Marcio. I'm like, I can't name the top 3. I'm like 30. Yeah.
Right. They all have different traits, different characteristics.
All have different traits. They always come up with something new at different times, and that's really what we want, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, Roger, we thank you for your time today. And again, for our audience, this is Dr. Roger Campbell. Thank you again, Roger.
No, thank you, Laura. Yeah, I wish you all the best, okay?
Yes, you too.
Take care.
Imagine if, with a few key concepts, you could have the potential to create a massive positive impact by bringing from hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars for swine producers. Join us on this small group and go to the next level of swine nutrition on this 7-week-long elite online training in applied swine nutrition and feeding by myself and my world-class invited speakers. Additionally, you enjoy an exclusive community to exchange ideas. Go now to www.eliteswinenutritionist.com.